decided to go on a camping trip, my family and I. It was a last-minute decision, really. My parents, my younger sister Emily, and I needed a break from the city's noise and chaos. My mom had found this remote forest online, known for its beauty and tranquility, perfect for a weekend getaway. She convinced my dad, who, in turn, convinced Emily and me. Being 21, I wasn't too keen on spending my weekend in the middle of nowhere, but I figured it would be a nice change of pace. We packed our gear and set out early on a Friday morning. The drive was long, but the scenery was breathtaking. Tall trees lined the winding roads, their leaves a mix of vibrant green and gold. The forest seemed to stretch on forever, a vast expanse of untouched wilderness. We finally arrived at the campsite in the late afternoon. It was a small clearing surrounded by dense woods, with a picturesque view of a nearby lake. The air was crisp and fresh, a welcome change from the polluted city air. Setting up camp was a family affair. My dad struggled with the tent, my mom fussed over the cooking equipment, and Emily and I gathered firewood. We settled in for the evening, enjoying a simple dinner of hot dogs and marshmallows roasted over the campfire. As night fell, the forest seemed to come alive with the sounds of nature, crickets chirping, leaves rustling, and the occasional hoot of an owl. It was peaceful, almost hypnotic. After dinner, we sat around the fire, telling stories and laughing. Emily, always the curious one, asked if we could explore the forest the next day. My dad agreed, saying it would be an adventure. We stayed up late, enjoying the serenity, before finally turning in for the night. I was just drifting off to sleep when I heard it, a faint whispering sound. At first, I thought it was the wind rustling through the trees, but as I listened, I realized it was something else. The whispers were soft and indistinct, like a hushed conversation just out of earshot. I sat up, straining to hear better. The whispers seemed to be coming from the forest, growing louder and more insistent. I shook my head, thinking it was my imagination, and tried to go back to sleep. The next morning, over breakfast, I mentioned the whispers to my family. My dad laughed it off, saying it was probably just the wind. My mom looked a little concerned, but didn't say anything. Emily, on the other hand, was intrigued. She wanted to explore the forest even more now, hoping to find the source of the whispers. Despite my unease, I agreed to go with her. We set out after breakfast, leaving my parents at the campsite. The forest was even more beautiful during the day, with sunlight filtering through the canopy, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. Emily and I walked in silence, listening to the sounds of nature. The deeper we went, the quieter it became, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Then, we heard the whispers again. This time, they were clearer, more distinct. It was as if the trees themselves were speaking, their leaves rustling with secrets. Emily looked at me, her eyes wide with excitement. I, on the other hand, felt a chill run down my spine. There was something unnatural about those whispers, something unsettling. We followed the sound, moving deeper into the forest. The trees grew taller and denser, their branches intertwining to form a thick canopy overhead. The air grew cooler, and a sense of foreboding settled over us. Emily seemed oblivious to the growing unease, her curiosity driving her forward. After what felt like hours, we stumbled upon a small clearing. In the center stood an ancient, gnarled tree, its trunk twisted and scarred. The whispers seemed to emanate from the tree itself, growing louder and more insistent. Emily approached the tree, reaching out to touch its rough bark. "Emily, wait," I called out, my voice trembling. "Something's not right." But she ignored me, her hand brushing against the tree's surface. The whispers grew louder, almost deafening, and the air around us seemed to shimmer. I took a step forward, reaching for Emily, but a sudden force knocked me back, sending me sprawling to the ground. When I looked up, Emily was gone. The clearing was empty, the whispers fading into silence. Panic surged through me, and I scrambled to my feet, calling out her name. There was no response, only the eerie stillness of the forest. I ran back to the campsite, my heart pounding in my chest. My parents were there, looking worried. I told them what had happened, and my dad immediately grabbed a flashlight and set off in search of Emily. My mom stayed behind, her face pale with fear. The hours dragged on, and there was still no sign of Emily. My dad returned, exhausted and empty-handed. We decided to wait until morning to continue the search, hoping that the daylight would make it easier to find her. That night, none of us slept. The whispers returned, louder and more insistent than ever. They seemed to surround our tent, pressing in on us from all sides. My mom clung to me, her eyes wide with terror. My dad sat by the fire, his face grim and determined. As dawn broke, we set out again, calling for Emily, searching every inch of the forest. But there was no trace of her. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. The whispers seemed to follow us, growing louder and more mocking. They were no longer just whispers. They were voices, taunting us, luring us deeper into the forest. We stumbled upon another clearing, similar to the one where Emily had disappeared. The ancient tree stood at its center, its twisted branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. My dad approached the tree, his face set in a mask of determination. He reached out to touch the bark, just as Emily had done. "No, Dad, don't!" I shouted, but it was too late. The moment his hand made contact, the air shimmered, and he vanished, just like Emily. My mom and I stood there, stunned and terrified. The whispers grew louder, filling the clearing with their eerie chorus. We had to get out of there, had to escape the forest before it claimed us too. We turned and ran, the whispers following us, urging us to return, to join the others. The forest seemed to close in around us, the trees forming an impenetrable barrier. My mom stumbled and fell, her ankle twisted. I helped her up, but the whispers grew louder, more insistent. We were trapped, lost in a forest that seemed alive with malevolent intent. I could feel the presence of the spirits, the souls of those who had perished within its depths. They were all around us, watching, waiting. Desperation clawed at my mind, and I knew we had to find a way out before it was too late. As we stumbled through the forest, I remembered the stories my grandmother used to tell me about spirits and curses. She had always said that the spirits of the dead could be appeased with offerings, that they could be coaxed into releasing their hold on the living. I didn't have much to offer, but I had to try something. I stopped, pulling out my pocket knife. I cut a small lock of my hair and placed it at the base of a tree, whispering a prayer for mercy. The whispers seemed to falter, growing softer, less insistent. I urged my mom to do the same, and she reluctantly cut a lock of her hair, placing it beside mine. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the whispers fading into a tense silence. We waited, hearts pounding, hoping that our offering would be enough. After what felt like an eternity, the trees seemed to part, revealing a narrow path leading out of the forest. We didn't hesitate. We ran, supporting each other, following the path as it wound through the trees. The forest seemed to close in behind us, the whispers returning, but fainter, more distant. We burst out of the woods, into the bright sunlight of the campsite. We collapsed on the ground, exhausted and trembling. My mom clung to me, tears streaming down her face. We had escaped, but at a terrible cost. Emily and my dad were gone, lost to the forest and its malevolent spirits. We packed up our things and left as quickly as we could, not daring to look back. The forest loomed behind us, its trees swaying gently in the breeze, whispering secrets that we could no longer hear. We never spoke of what happened that weekend, never returned to that forest. But the memories haunted us, the whispers echoing in our minds. We had survived, but we would never be the same. The forest had taken something from us, something we could never get back. And sometimes, late at night, I still hear the whispers, calling me back, luring me deeper into the darkness.